Well, we're back with another edition of Gus and Travis Talk Film, and this time we're doing Sydney Pollack, who was my choice, and I chose Sydney Pollack because I think he's a marvelous director, and he made a variety of films throughout his career, and I'm very sad that he's no longer directing. I'm very sad that he passed away, and I thought we should highlight him.
Now, I like the idea of your selecting Sydney Pollack. One, because he's a director that gets forgotten.
Absolutely.
And the thing I like about him is that he reminds me of the old studio pros. These were the guys who you can give them an assignment. I'm talking guys like Henry King, Henry Hathaway, people like that. You give them, they're not considered auteurs. You give them an assignment and they're going to bring it off excellently, whatever genre you select, or whatever genre the story happens to be in. So with Henry King, for instance, I've seen period pieces, I've seen him do westerns, I've seen him do noirs, I've seen him do melodramas, and it's the same thing with Sydney Pollack.
Absolutely.
Oddly enough, this week, or the past week, because you had mentioned the week before, I was watching TCM, and a movie I had not seen, and my wife hadn't seen it either since we saw it in the theater, The Way We Were. And I thought, oh, let's look in on it. I looked on it, and I'd forgotten. It's a Sydney Pollack picture.
Yeah, it is a Sydney Pollack picture.
It's just one of the ones that gets forgotten even when somebody thinks about him. You don't remember that he did that, and it's a wonderful film.
Yeah.
So early in his career.
Maybe. We'll get to that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We'll get to that. Okay, well, I'll start off since he's my filmmaker pick, and my favorite film by Sydney Pollack, my choice, even though I have several favorites, is 3 Days of the Condor, which is a thriller starring Robert Redford. If you have not seen it, and I think that it's really probably one of the key political thrillers that has left a lasting impression and influence on even the movies made today. I think that movies like Michael Clayton and Syriana clearly are drawing from even Pollack's role in Michael Clayton connects everything, and it's just very smart and very sharp, and like I said, is able to give some kind of political resonance without pushing it really hard. So I think that's the best of those paranoid thrillers from the 70s.
Well, to comment on this, I have a little bit of history with that particular film. One, because it was made in New York. It was being made at a point when I was working as a waiter in a restaurant called Daly's Dandelion. This restaurant belonged to Skitch Henderson. He used to be the conductor for The Tonight Show. Anyway, he had this restaurant, and a guy named Greg Martin used to come in there, a nice fellow. And Greg was the stand-in for both Robert Redford and Paul Newman.
Okay.
He lived in Hawaii. What's the island off Hawaii? It wasn't the main island he lived on, but the other. And whenever he had a picture to do, that's when we'd see him. And I kept saying to him, how could you live in Oahu, is where he lived. I said, how could you live there and work in Hollywood? And he said to me, well, whenever they're doing a film, and he said each of them really only does one film a year, they send me a message. They call me. At the time we didn't have cell phones and things like that. He said, I get the call, I get on a plane, the next day I'm here. But anyway, he was telling me about the film, and he brought the script in because he always got a small part in all of the pictures. And he brought the script in, and the script at that point, it was taken from a novel. And it was 6 days of The Condor was the novel. And they decided to compress it. But then things began to change, and he would talk to me about the changes in the script. And one of the things that you're alluding to were Redford's influence on it, because he had, that was when the guy had taken, I can't think of the man's name, he had taken all that information to the New York Times, and it was on the front page. And that essentially is the end of the film, because the film ending was actually changed for that, But
it has one of my favorite endings to a picture, because you're just not quite sure, like he wants to submit this material, but then Cliff Robertson is like, well, do you think it's going to make any difference? Or basically, do you think you're even going to make it, So,
but it was an interesting ending for that. But just as a side note, the one fascination for me was, I would say to Greg all the time, how can you be the stand-in? What happens when they both make a film together? Because by that time they had made Butch Cassidy.
Yeah.
And I think they were on the way to this thing. And he said, well, it's simple enough. He says, I stand a light for Redford on that side. Then I stand over there. And I said, do you get double pay? He said, oh, yeah.
Nice.
So anyway, that was just a side note.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Anyway, no, but now for my favorite of the Pollack pictures, they shoot horses, don't they?
Okay.
Is my favorite.
Okay.
The reason I think one is it's a film that I feel, although it was nominated in its time for several awards and it won a few, it doesn't have a reputation. And I think it's a sensational film. The immersion that he gets, that he puts you into that dance marathon, the way he does it, and the way he handles film, that's true auteurism. I don't think any other director could have done it as well. And for reasons unknown to me, the film, although, as I said, it got critical responses, there are a number of people who don't like that picture. They find it unpleasant.
Well, it is unpleasant.
Oh, yes.
And in a
but
good way.
I think in the best possible way. I've read the novel. It improves the novel considerably. But the sense of urgency that he builds with that, the mood that he builds, and then the existential despair of both the Jane Fonda character and Michael Zarazan's character, I think is so well realized that when the end comes along, I absolutely believe it. Like that.
I
so
agree.
for those reasons, and for his managing of those actors, because he got sensational performances of actors today who are more well known, even Bruce Dern, who has a good role in that film, but wasn't the Bruce Dern of today. Jane Fonda, who is on her way to getting an Academy Award, which I think she should have gotten for that picture.
That one,
He got terrific. And Gig Young, whose career had been mostly as a light comic. And Gig Young did get the Best Supporting Academy Award for the film because he was so terrific in it. So that's my favorite.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I thought that you would mention that film. I'm surprised you didn't choose it for your most underrated, which we'll talk about in a little while.
So,
because it is vastly underrated.
Yeah. But I like it so much, I had to pick it.
And I can see why people don't like it, just because when I watched it, it made me sick. It makes you sick.
Yes.
Like it's a truly disturbing picture.
And it gets the mood of the 30s so
Very well.
The despair of the country, everything. I mean, he really gets it completely.
My most underrated is a film that I actually just rewatched. It's one of his last films, not his last film, but one of his last films, is a movie called Random Hearts with Harrison Ford and Kristen Scott Thomas. Now, this is one of those when I first saw it, didn't like it at all, and I decided that I would give it another try. And I really feel that movie, again, underrated. I think I looked up that, if that Rotten Tomatoes critic thing has like a 13% positive. I mean, this movie got panned by the critics. I really feel that one of the reasons that it did is that for an American movie, it is emotionally complex, psychologically complex. It actually is a deep film about grieving, about infidelity, about grieving for a loss of your husband or wife, and features probably Harrison Ford's last to now good performance, where he basically, instead of pushing it and forcing it, does nothing. And you really like a complex Ford that you don't see outside of movies like Witness or Mosquito Coast. And I just think that I think that Pollack, you're right, he's a director, he's a great director for hire style person, but I think that one of his strengths was romance.
Yes,
right?
very much so.
And there's not many directors that are really talented in that genre and can consistently do it. Out of Africa, You Like the Way We Were, can't think right now. This one that I'm mentioning, Havana,
yes.
Like consistent, even Electric Horseman,
yes.
right? And he consistently pulls that off. And with this one, not easy material. So anyway, that's my choice for his most underrated pick.
My choice would be Jeremiah Johnson.
Cool.
And the reason for that is that I think it's the best, it would be a subgenre, I guess you could call it, mountain man picture. Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah. Because they've made the deliberate ones, you know, and even I think the one called Mountain Men, Charlton Heston directed. And then there were a couple Grizzly Adams and things like that. But the thing why I like the film is because it is one of a piece. It doesn't even have really a high point. It's not one that is structured with an arc, in a dramatic arc where you get to a climax and then resolve it. It just goes along on the same line. I also think, and All Is Lost, I think, echoes some of that today, that it picks up something that people never perceived about Robert Redford. Because of his appearance, because of his looks, they always had him, saw him as an urban pretty boy, so to speak. And I remember when I saw the film, I thought, I am getting the essential Redford here. That is a strictly loner fellow. Not just the rugged thing, but the loner. The man who really just wants to be by himself, survive within a barren environment, and communicate with his own muses. You know, and that's the thing that I always, whenever I go back to that picture, and I go back to it from time to time, the DVD of it is always available on sale. I found it for $1.99. Nice. I found it because it's a throwaway picture by most people's standards. But I go back for it because he so closely locates the picture as that kind of loner mountain man film.
Most overrated. Okay. For me, most overrated is The Way We Were. Okay. I think that it is the most. Hold on, our camera died. I think that it is the most melodramatic, slow, tedious, cheesy piece of filmmaking that I may have ever seen, right? But and not organic. To Redford doesn't feel organic in it. And to me, even though I said Pollack is a romantic director, to me that's his worst romance. So call me an idiot. Here.
No. The odd thing is I totally agree with you on every point.
But you still like it.
I still like it because it's a guilty pleasure for me.
Gotcha.
The reason it's a guilty pleasure is because I guess when I saw it, I was at a point in my life where I was personally and emotionally going through a similar kind of relationship that was close but was coming apart at the same time. I remember when we saw the film, the girlfriend I was with at the time, when I came out, she was very enthusiastic about it, and I just kept thinking that it was prophesying our future. Gotcha. You know, like that. But I saw it just recently, as I said, and there are other things that I like about it. One is I love the glamour of it, okay? Redford looks sensational in it, and that's part of the aesthetic of cinema. Good-looking people, okay? Being photographed beautifully, okay?
This is true.
And you had the contrast, and the press made a lot about it at the time, of his appearance versus Streisand's, you know? And an interesting contrast because she's not an unattractive woman. She is her beauty is in a different direction than the conventional. And to put them together, it was, I thought, a very interesting match. And from what I understand, Redford was always looking for another project they could do together because I guess they were harmonious in their connection in terms of the film. The other thing was I knew several people on the picture. Murray Hamilton, who I've told you over the years was a good friend. He was on the film. Another good friend, and I get nostalgic when I see him, and I saw him recently a lot of Patrick O'Neill. And I look at it and I think of the times, the conversations I had with Patrick, and how expert Patrick was as an actor across the board. And so for those personal reasons, I like it a lot, and it's one of my favorite Pollack films, but I can't disagree with you that it's not a good movie.
Well, you do bring up one interesting point that I wanted to go off of, is that you said that when you first saw it, that you connected with it emotionally because of where you were. And what's interesting is this time when I said I watched Random Hearts, I all of a sudden connected with it emotionally with where I am, which sounds weird. I haven't lost a loved one, but just some.
No, I know what you're saying.
And it's interesting because 10 years from now, I might watch that film and I might think like it doesn't resonate, but right now it resonates really hard. And that's what that's what's good about cinema is it's just constantly
Right, yes.
Your relationship with it is constantly evolving.
It's something with literature too.
Yeah, exactly. So, what was your most overrated?
Easily and quickly. I think it's the worst too of all the pictures he made. Sabrina, the remake that he did.
He directed that?
Yes, with
that's
Ford.
terrible.
Yes.
Oof. You're right.
The script was bad to start with.
Yeah.
The original idea had a certain kind of charm that the actors who played it, Bogart and William Holden, were wonderful contrasts for each other. Audrey Hepburn being in the center, she was such a unique presence in cinema that she created a category all of her own. And you didn't have this in the other. Plus, I thought for the times, the time that the story is placed in, because it's moved up to date, the writing of the Harrison Ford's character was all wrong. And that's a film where, when I looked at it, I thought, gee, they should have called me because I knew exactly what to do to make that character work in that context.
Just one more rewrite, right?
It needed that rewrite, but it would have vastly changed just about everything in it. And so, and the direction itself, to me, seems by the numbers. It doesn't seem exciting
it doesn't stand
or
out
inspired or anything. It really seems like almost hack work, And so for me, that is, and the film did well in the box office. I remember the critics sort of liked it enough. But I didn't at all.
Well, there's lots of gems in his filmography. I mean,
we
didn't talk about Tootsie.
No, not at all.
You love Tootsie.
Absolutely.
Don't start. I don't want you to start.
No,
he quotes Tootsie compulsively. If we get him started, it'll be just unending. But Tootsie, and I know you're not a huge fan of this film, but I really like Out of Africa. I think he did a really good job. Again, romance, right? Done well.
I don't positively hate it, but I didn't like it like everybody else did.
Yeah. I mean, I think that
I would have picked, to tell you the truth, his most overrated could be, for me, could be Out of Africa.
I thought you might.
No,
but I think that one thing that I wanted to mention is that, people talk about these director-actor collaborations, De Niro and Scorsese, and but one of the best is Redford and Pollack, and they were totally in sync. They totally understood each other, I feel.
I remember something he said on, I think it was the Actors Studio interview. He said that Redford once came to him, and Redford said to him, how is it I'm always either chasing after love or falling out of love? He said, I'd love to get a story where I'm just absolutely in love and the other person in love with me. That we're totally harmonious. And he said he had to look at Redford and he said, well, where's the drama?
Yeah, exactly. And then they made Havana, which is kind of that film.
Yeah, like that.
But that's funny that you say that to relate this. We make movies. Hanlon the other day, in every film that I've cast Hanlon in pretty much, he doesn't get the girl in the end. There's some kind of, he's losing the girl, he's a piece of shit or something, you know what I mean? And it just, like, he's constantly like the love lost, guy. And he said to me the other day at the end of our 52 films, he goes, will you write me a movie where I get the girl at the end? And it reminded me, I thought immediately about the Redford thing, and I said, okay,
I'll
I may
say
have
something
to.
else. Love stories are the hardest. I mean, to do it well, are the hardest things to
really
do.
Difficult,
they really are. They're nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
It's so difficult. The other thing we haven't talked about, really, and we should, is
his acting.
Right.
Yeah. And to me, one film that I'd like to highlight for his acting, I recently watched Eyes Wide Shut. And I mean, for the who knows, like 10th time. Yeah. And he is so well cast in that film, and I think there's such his quality of just like the upper middle class, not statesman, but upper middle class man with so much going on up here, so much intelligence, but also can be so menacing in a film. And he gets that in Eyes Wide Shut, and he gets it in Michael Clayton too.
Yes. The thing I always like about him, I mean, there's something about his looks that gave him an everyman quality.
That's true.
The upper middle class everyman. And I keep thinking, you know, every time I see him in a movie, that I know this person because I've seen him 1,000, 100 times on the street. You know. Tootsie, of course, I love him as the agent in that.
Absolutely.
I think he is terrific as the agent in that. I like him a lot in Michael Clayton. And then an earlier film, and it's a film that I remember we discovered, when I say we, several acting students and I, when I was in acting school, which is where he met Redford, War Hunt.
Which I haven't seen yet.
That's Dennis and Terry Saunders, two brothers,
Okay.
made that film. And they were comers, and then for whatever reason, they kind of slipped off the grid. But they made this interesting war film. And I remember, because I knew who Redford was. I'd seen him in plays and stuff. When I went to see it, I remember because Sydney Pollack plays his friend in the war, the battle scenes and stuff like that. Not real battle scenes, mostly in the war zone, but, you know, you see them outside of that. And I remember thinking, what an interesting actor, what a likable actor. And that was one of the qualities that he projected. Even menacingly, that's what gave his menace a kind of larger threat.
Charm.
Yes,
Yeah.
was the friendliness that he projected.
And that's what you have in that scene in Eyes Wide Shut, where he's telling Tom Cruise basically that I'm part of this society, and is that he's so warm and likable, but on the underneath the surface, there's all of this kind of evil.
One of my regrets is that he didn't do more acting.
Yeah,
because he was a
really good actor.
Staple anchor. Probably never would have won, say, an Academy Award kind of thing.
Yeah.
But boy, he was reassuring. When he came on screen, you kind of, oh, I'm in good hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And again, like, I mean, you know, every year people in the film world pass away, but I have to say that, like, when Pollack passed, I was surprised.
Yeah.
I didn't know, you know, it just came up, and it seemed, you know, he'd had a long career, but it seemed
early.
Too early, you know, and I wish that there was another Pollack picture coming, you know.
No, you know, the same thing with me, because it seemed like he had a third act ready to happen.
So so that's our take on Sydney Pollack. So who are you picking for next week?
Michael Curtiz.
Michael Curtiz.
Yes. Okay.
We've got a big amount of, if you don't know, Michael Curtiz made maybe like 100 pictures.
Oh, yeah.
He made a lot of films. So we've got quite a filmography to look through.
Yes, we'll talk about Michael Curtiz. He did Casablanca. He did
Adventures of Robin Hood.
He did Yankee Doodle Dandy.
He directed Doris Day musicals.
Yes.
He
this guy did everything. So he'll be an interesting person for us to talk about.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you next week with Michael Curtiz.
Exactly.